However, this spirit can be transformed into a stronger spirit ash Julan and Anna. In order to get both rewards, you will need to use one iris type on Julan for your first playthrough and the other one in New Game Plus. With that, you can make a choice. Before leaving this area, we can go the web stronger its power and to make it look even more stylish. Difficulty. We got to here, Mother of Fingers have been defeated. We will get Emir's High Priest armor set, Maternal Staff, and Bell Bearing. After resting at a site of grace, we can find a wounded Julan sitting in her initial location. We have two options for how to finish her quest line. We can use either an Iris of Grace or an Iris of Occultation on her, and each comes with its own reward. If you recall, we got 2 Iris of Grace and 2 Iris of Occultation in part 3 of this series, so you should still have at least one of each at this point. Also, it's a good idea to watch ahead before making your decision. First, if we use the Iris of Occultation on Julan, we will get the Sword of Night. This is probably the coolest looking katana, if not weapon, in the game. It is a katana with a blade made of shadows. It has a really awesome looking unique skill called Witching Hour Slash, which can be charged to increase its power and make it look even more stylish. The second option is to use the Iris of Grace on Julan. This will get us her Spirit Ashes, which is a fairly mid-summons. However, this spirit can be transformed into a stronger Spirit Ash, Julan and Anna. In order to get both rewards, you will need to use one Iris type on Julan for your first playthrough and the other one in New Game Plus. With that, you can make your choice. Before leaving this area, we can go out the west exit to pick up the Cherishing Finger spell, which is sitting in front of Yuri's tombstone.
No light anywhere at all. This is the night I know. Our night.
Before leaving this area, we can go out the west exit to pick up the Cherishing Finger spell, which is sitting in front of Yuri's tombstone. Now, pick on Julan for your first playthrough and the other one in New Game Plus. With that, you can make your choice. Before leaving this area, we can go out the west exit to pick up the Cherishing Finger spell, which is sitting in front of Yuri's tombstone. Now, in order to transform Julan's Spirit Ashes, we will need to fast travel to the Hinterland Site of Grace. And even if you already chose the Sword of Night, you should also do this, as we will be getting some other unique items as a bonus. We will start by heading southeast and up into the Shaman Village. Near the village's entrance is a small peculiar tree. A legendary incantation, Minor Earth Tree, can be found in front of it. moving over.
Yay.
We can find a strong defensive talisman we found a small peculiar up into other and even many love.
This is a ranking of the top 5 katanas in Shadow of the Erdtree. And the list might surprise you because the very popular Sword of Night Shadow Katana is not number 1 on this list. So let me dive straight into it and start justifying why that's the case, starting with number 5, the Great Katana. This is the only katana on the list that doesn't have a unique Ash of War weapon skill. But that doesn't mean it isn't special in its own way, because you can get this bad boy in the first 2 minutes of the DLC, and seeing as it is really strong compared to lots of the other non-katana weapons in the game, you definitely get a lot of bang for your buck here. And it's unique amongst the other than really could try to worrying about the mid more bleed damage here. And so this is what I mean, like you can lean into the dex and strength angle, but the weapon is really outclasses the one on this one. So let's talk about some of those other katanas now. And if you're enjoying the video, drop a like. Number 4, the Star-Lined Sword Katana. This one is great if you're a fan of magic, if you're a magic user and you love running sorceries. The other katanas on this list will be much less suited to you if you're a fan of that playstyle, but this one is pretty damn good. You tell me, leave a comment down below. So overall, the Star-Lined Sword, it's got a unique Ash of War, it's really strong in certain situations, but even so, it's still outclassed by some of the other ones on this list. Number 3, the Sword of Night Shadow Katana. Now, this might cause some uproar, because I know everybody loves this thing, and I gotta say, it's awesome. Like, it's so damn cool, and the quest for it is also pretty gnarly, and that makes it even cooler in my opinion. So I think a lot of people probably assumed this would be number 1 on the list, but there's actually some even cooler stuff coming later in the video, so stay tuned for those. For now, let's talk about the sword. Like I said, the quest to get it is a fun quest, just cool in general. The weapon itself is awesome. It has a crazy cool aesthetic. I made a full guide on exactly how to get it that was like over 10 minutes long because it was so intense. Like some of the other katanas on this list take like 30 seconds to get or 1 minute. So it really just goes to show that this one means business. So let's talk a little bit about its unique Ash of War. Like I mentioned, all the rest of the katanas. This one is called Witching Hour Slash. And it's nice because the regular moveset, this katana, is really short range, but Witching Hour Slash takes the range issue and completely gets rid of it. And if you check out the range here, when it's fully charged up, you can see that it really is massive. Now you might think, okay, well I don't want to charge it up every time, right? When it's not fully charged, it unleashes a triple shadow attack that is much less risky, pouring a lot less time into charging, but it is still really effective as well. So it's still powerful even when you're not doing those charge-ups. And it means that if you're in a scenario where want to do the charged attack, and then something happens, you need to dodge something or whatever, and you're just like, yeah, I'll just throw out the small attack instead to get out of there sooner, you can totally do that. So there's some nice variability there as well. Now, I'm sure you've probably put two and two together here from watching the attack, that this thing really shines against any sizable group of enemies. It's just going to shred big crowds when it's fully charged. And also, I've noticed that a lot of the time I'll charge it up and I'll wait for an enemy to get closer, and they just never see it coming for some reason. Like maybe it's in the name, it's just because it's a shadow katana? I don't know. Either way, it seems to be pretty damn effective. And the same thing goes for bosses, really. Like, you can take a look at me absolutely shredding the boss health here, and if you pair that with a mimic, you are going to be unstoppable. Now, this all sounds fantastic, but this thing's number 3 on the list, not number 1 on the list. So what's the deal, right? What are the negatives? There is one pretty huge drawback here, though. So this thing uses those really good. So if you're keeping up really good, it's just going to be another amazing short, which is just widely save your ass against a big shielded wall, which is where katanas actually struggle sometimes. So, look, so in that description, it actually says the actual wall cannot be guarded. So as long as you're not being hit, you're going to have no problem landing this attack against any, which is pretty neat. And like I said, you need a full line of Number 2, the Dragon Hunter's Great Katana. So number 5 on our list was just standard Great Katana. Right? This is a new weapon type brought in the Shadow version. Number 2 on our list here is another great katana, but this time it does have a unique war, and just overall, I think it's one of the fun in general. So as you can see, it does a huge amount of damage with its normal attacks, just like our great katana. And the actual war is called Dragon Slash. When you use it, do a jumping attack that improves the power of the red. And if you charge it instead, it shoots out a projectile, and it has great range. It's hard to start any boss fight with one of these attacks and kind of trick the boss and go how harder open world enemies with I would say. Using that word tentatively, it's the stealthy ring, but it's easier because you can just do it from a distance, and that makes this thing pretty nice. Now on top of that, with the jump attack, because you're jumping, you're more likely to hit an enemy in the head with either the close range attack or the projectile. Damage, and the projectile is impactful. However, here, let's try to count 4 with just one target power. The Shadow Katana, the Sword Knight, can stop targets with skill and regular short range attacks. It's not forced to lock in full charge information. So you're probably wondering at this point, right? Like, does this thing have any downsides? Is it bad in any way? Like, how is it not number 1? And the only kind of caveat I would say is that you are going to want to maintain your distance against a boss. And if you can do that, you're going to go crazy against that boss. Like, you're going to do so well. But obviously, that isn't always the easiest thing in the world to do. And so granted, if you can get up close to them, you're still going to get some decent damage in, still got bleed like the other katanas, but its real kind of proficiency, I would say, is at range, getting that massive burst hit in. And I think that's where it really does shine. Now, before we get to number 1 on this list, I want to give you guys a pro tip that I think is going to make your life even easier when you're deciding which one of these to use. So we've talked about individual katanas through this video so far. We're about to talk about the final one. But I think that sometimes when you've got one katana that's good at one thing and another katana that's good at another thing, you might as well put them together. So for example, if you want the range from the Dragon Hunter and you also equip this number 1 katana that we're about to talk about to cover all the other combat scenarios in the game, you're going to have a really well-rounded kind of attack style, attack pool, and that might be the kind of key that you need to get through some of those bosses yourself. Anyway, let's talk about number 1 on the list, Rakshasa's Great Katana. There is no doubt in my mind about Rakshasa's being the best Great Katana in the game. So why is that the case, right? Number one, there's a secret stat on this weapon that really elevates it above some of the other katanas. It's called hyper armor, and it means that you get a window where your attack cannot be interrupted. Then on top of that, it's got a unique Ash of War, like I mentioned. It's called Weed Cutter, and it means you can just spam attacks over and over again without needing to reset if an enemy attacks you. And you're also not limited by your stamina, for instance, because it barely uses any to attack. And it uses a pretty insignificant amount of FP to use Weed Cutter as well. So I would say there's basically no drawback to this, besides the one debuff, which is that you do take a little bit more damage while attacking with Weed Cutter. But if the enemy in front of you dies while you're using it, then who cares, right? And you can reallocate points from Endurance and Mind and put them in Vigor to increase your total health, so you can keep tanking hits for as long as possible while you're using it, should you so desire. And like the other katanas, it does pretty damage. So this thing slaps, and if you want to know how to get it, I'm guiding you on the screen right now, which will explain exactly how you can do that. So enjoy!
Hello and welcome back to Raid. You'll be okay. As a heavier hitting weapon, focusing on strength and arcane, but above everything, in S+ tier, is the Bandit Curved Sword, Scavenger's Curved Sword, for the occult lead setup with Seppuku. This is one of the strongest things in the entire game, and it's still absolutely busted to this day. They've done many little changes to say stats build up, power stance, and so on, and it means absolutely nothing to maximize your arcane to like 80. You run Seppuku for the short-lived, really effective buff. Have a lot of buffs to get on and do in the right order. Arcane rankings. Maybe there's some weapons you might have included yourself, but if this was useful to you,
great katana. Take increased depth. And on forever and never. There is that going for it. It looks cool. So where do we rank it? In the S tier. Only downside would be that compared to the Rakshasa, it doesn't have hyper armor, and given its incredible range, most of the time you won't even need to trade with your opponent, you will just outrange the out of it. So where do we rank it? In the S tier, of course. And that is our final ranking, guys. So to summarize, the Dragon Great Katana is toilet for 4 range, 4 damage, 4 Ash of War, just like it's so broke. I mean, it's fun to use. There is that going for it. It looks cool. It's cool to learn the Ash of War. But honestly, it's definitely the worst out of all the katanas. Maybe toilet is a bit strong and a bit nicer, but it's more fun to do to the toilet, let's be honest. The Rakshasa that goes into A tier for a good range, super high damage, great Ash of War, and little downside is taking extra damage. And finally, the Great Katana is S tier for all the reasons I just explained 1 minute ago. I'm not gonna repeat myself, come on guys. But what do you guys think? Is it a fair ranking? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and comment. I love you guys, and see you in the next video. Bye-bye. Comment, like, and subscribe.
There are well over 50 ST weapons in this game, so naturally when making it, you're better off using Bloodblade because this weapon skill can cheese so many different types of bosses and enemies. And the Naga Keeper is just going to be the best weapon to use Bloodblade with, as it does just make it do more damage, have more range, and just do more stance damage too. It is going to be like a much better version of the Reduvio, and this skill alongside other types of bleed-based skills have gotten better in this DLC because one, there is going to be a new bleed-based. I just want to give a quick honorable mention to some power sensing combos. Being that some weapons are just much better with dual wielded compared to just using them by themselves, it's going to be hard to really rank them in a list like this, so I just want to talk about them separately. But things like Scavenger's Curve Sword and Bandit's Curve Sword power sense make some of the most broken builds in the game. The jumping attacks do insane damage, the running attacks are really amazing too, and there's lots of different things in this DLC that can actually help boost those things as well. And this is also true for things like power sensing spears and power sensing twin blades. These things are just amazing. Number one, the Blasphemous Blade. This it does a huge amount of
it. The first Great Katana we're going to look at is the Great Katana. I am going with Blood Affinity. And now it is time for the third and final Great Katana, and what is slowly becoming my favorite weapon in the entire game. Here we have the Rakshasa's Great Katana. With its unique Ash of War, Weed Cutter, you get B scaling in Dex and D in Strength. And just like the Dragon Hunter's Great Katana, this is a somber weapon, so you cannot increase the blood loss buildup. However, if you could, I think this katana would end up being a serious problem, so I think it's a good thing that you can't. The moveset is the exact same as the other two katanas, except for the heavy attack string. Which gives you more poke attacks. Absolutely incredible range on these. Then you got the Ash of War Weed Cutter, which looks like this. As long as you have FP and stamina, you can do it infinitely. You get a boatload of hyper armor, it does a ton of damage, it can work with successive attack buffs. And on top of the unique heavy attacks and the unique Ash of War, this weapon also has a very unique property, where while you are attacking, you are less likely to get staggered if somebody attacks you. However, that is actually also taking more damage yourself. So this weapon is going to take more damage. Oh my gosh, dude. What a strong Ash of War. Good fight. And while I am having trouble finding exact values of how much more damage you actually take, it does not seem like an amount that's going to deter me or should deter anybody from using this weapon. I'm just absolutely in love with this weapon, dude. This is way too sick. Dude, oh my gosh. And with how you can just spam this Ash of War, and it's a red katana, It almost feels like FromSoft made a little joke, kind of calling back to everybody spamming the Rivers of Blood Ash award. This is basically the same thing, just without the obnoxious amount of bleed. And we're going to go ahead and finish things off with an invasion here. See if we can just absolutely decimate a team. I hear something. Oh. Turn to your right, there will be an elusive.
Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming and more. Shadow might be better, as well as also if the enemy is weak to magic or fire. It'd be a lot higher on the list. Bigger break potential, it's buffable, or trade with it. So you've got it worth it, totally should. So you've got higher output options. Again, relatively unchanged in 12.3, so it's relatively where it was before. There are destroyer. I will say, also find new talent against better at breaking them. Normally you might still literally crossfire on the ground and safe. You just need a target that's not you get one scavenger curved sword in a normal playthrough. You have to go into New Game Plus or have a friend drop you another, and you can farm bandit curved swords kind of infinitely. So for the sake of it, in this footage, I'm using one scavenger and one bandit. It is so much burst and damage build-up once you get going that it is genuinely busted. What other weapon? I don't use cheats, but I kind of do because from my first playthrough, I used the Mimic tier and every NPC. But above it, very clearly, number 2 is the bandit's curved swords or the scavenger curved swords. This is up to you. Scavenger curved swords are kind of better normal stats, where the bandits take over at ultra high stats. The truth is, you can only get one scavenger curved sword in a normal playthrough. You have to go into New Game Plus or have a friend drop you another, and you can farm bandit curved swords kind of infinitely. So for the sake of it, in this footage I'm using one scavenger and one bandit. It is so much burst and damage build up once you get going.
These gentlemen and tarnished of all ages, usually if it ain't for April, it's been proven time and show you exactly how to get there. This is the pogo stick of doom. Quite simply, a ridiculous amount of synergy based around two main things. The Scavenger's curved sword, which has natural bleed buildup on it, but also incredibly high physical damage scaling when set to occult affinity, which then also makes the bleed buildup scale even further with your arcane stat, and then jump attacks because power stancing curved swords gives you a 4-hit jump attack. Combine that with every source of multi-hit boost in the game, add an 8-bit more bleed on top, and suddenly you're able to pump out tens of thousands of damage in seconds. Not to mention there is even added versatility in the DLC for this, because you can just incredibly easily transfer this into a sprint attack build as new armor and sword. You can only get one of these per playthrough technically, but you can always ask a friend to drop one for you. People on our Discord, which is linked in the description, are also usually happy to help with this, or alternatively you can just do it on New Game Plus, or even use one bandit's curved sword for a bit less damage, but also the same functional build. You want to set this to occult scaling so it scales with your arcane, and also so that it scales the natural bleed buildup on the weapon. And you'll do this with the Seppuku Ash of War, which I'll get into the specifics of later, but basically it's just more damage, more bleed, which is just good for us. Past that, you want a seal. The Dragon Communion seal actually scales quite well with our stats, and is 0 weight, so it's perfect. Then you want the White Mask Helmet for a 10% damage boost for 20 seconds after a bleed occurs nearby. Then we have the Grey Bird Black Quill Armor. This gives you a 10% boost to damage done with jump attacks, specifically identical to the base game's Raptor's Black Feather Armor, but personally I just like the aesthetic of this one more, and it's new, so why not? This comes from a specific grave area, this one located a short walk northwest of the Temple Town Ruins Site of Grace. You want to head up to the hill directly northwest of this, right in front of you from the grates, and as you pass by all the great birds themselves along here, you'll just see this armor waiting on the ground to be picked up at the end of the path. For the other two armor pieces then, you want Rakshasa, Gauntlets, and Greaves. These are simply a 2% damage increase for each of them. You can of course wear fashion of your choice instead of these two pieces here if you want, or just heavier armor if you want more poise or defense, as these bonuses are honestly quite low, but the min-max options are these two pieces because that is just pure damage. As for how to get them, they are from the Eastern Nameless Mausoleum, down near the Recluse River downstream, site of Grace. From here, just take the gravestone parkour path down around the sort of river and follow the cliff line around like so, and then you'll see the building appear in front of you. Then we have our talismans, the Lord of Blood's Exaltation, for 20% bonus damage for 20 seconds after proccing a bleed nearby. The Claw Talisman for a 15% boost to jump attack damage. Rotten Winged Sword and
through this, so we're going up in minus bell bearing number 2, therefore allowing you to purchase Somber Smithing Stones 3 and 4. Following on from this, we're then going further north, this time into the snowy region again. This time what you want to do is turn your attention to the first Church of Marika, which is located over here. You basically run across the frozen lake. your attention to the first church of America, which is located over here. You basically run across the frozen lake, and once you get outside the church, there is a dead body, and if you interact with the dead body, you grab the collectible. It has the Somber Stone Miner's Bell bearing 3, thus allowing you to purchase the next 2 tiers of Somber Smithing Stones. Following on from there, we're then going back over to the region I mentioned before. Again, sort of a spoilery area, but given that you are at this point in the video, you probably have stuck through this. So we're going over to the dragony sort of region over on the right-hand side. And for this one,
Well, I took you for dead.
Great katanas. Yes, I know. They were completely copied from the longsword of the Monster Hunter series. But we can forgive and we can forget, especially when these weapons just arrive in the lands between and are already on top of the food chain as one of the absolutely effective weapons. And we have a total of 3 great katanas. I thought it would be a great idea to make every single one of them for you guys. So, who do you think is going to be crowned as the best great katana I've ever used? Let's see that.
There's a lot of hyper armor though. Hey guys, Oro here, and welcome back to another Elden Ring PvP video. Today, we're using the Rakshasa's Great Katana and her armor set. So, Weed Cutter, the weapon art, it sucks. Has a lot of hyper armor though, but the damage is quite low and it's super slow and predictable. Very, very situational. However, the Great Katana itself is one of the best Great Katanas, if not for the fact that it is the only Great Katana with hyper armor out of the 3. It is also usually the strongest. Anyways, here's the build. Using, of course, Rakshasa's Great Katana, with the Lightning Misery Port for riposte or backstabs. We're using the Rakshasa set, which, again, it says, greatly increases damage taken by the wearer. This is just to show that for its weight class, it has very low resistances. It doesn't have another extra debuff on it. It is 2% extra damage to everything per piece, for a total of 8% damage, so it's very nice. Millicent's Prosthesis for plus 5 dex and successive attacks. Basically, we never get the successive attack bonus, but plus 5 dex is very nice. Two-handed Sword Talisman, because we're always two-handing. Crimson Seed Talisman plus 1 for extra heals on her flask. And of course, you know me, I go for Passion. As for the flask, we use Deflecting Heart tier and Wing Crystal tier. As for extra Talisman, because we're always two-handing. Crimson Seed Talisman +1 for extra heals on her flask. And of course, you know me, I go for fashion. As for the flask, we use Deflecting Heart here, and with go for fashion. And +1 for extra heals on her flask. And of course, you know me, I go for fashion. As for the flask, we use Deflecting Heart here, and Wing Crystal tier. If you don't want to deflect, you can use the Dexterity Not Crystal tier to get to 80. And that's the build. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoy the video. Hello, gamers. Let me help you.
The Rakshasa's Great Katana is one of the is the specialty of this build. Each wing packs punch, and enemies will also suffer bleed procs in the process, making this build even more powerful. Compared to the previous Rakshasa build that I made, the Bloodlust Samurai is even deadlier since I loaded it up with another broken weapon and gives the build the ability to deal with ranged attacks for more versatility. Additionally, this build can tank damage while it trades blows with enemies, as the Bloodlust Samurai has decent damage negation stats, life steals, and hyper armor capabilities. If you want a simple yet powerful build to play, this setup is for you. Build playstyle is out of the way, let's start this guide by tackling the Bloodlust Samurai stats. Note that I will be standardizing all of my builds around level 200, and it is up to you if you wish to level up the build past around this level. Starting with Vigor first, and I have 50 Vigor points as this build usually trades blows with enemies, and I can easily see that 60 points is still a good choice for this build. You are still going to dodge frequently, so I think 50 points is the sweet spot here. Next is mine, and 25 points were allocated to it. The FP usage of this build is not really that demanding, so I think 25 points will do the job. Endurance is next, and I have 30 points allocated to it. And your main skill for this build eats a lot of stamina on the other hand, but I find 30 points works really well in most cases. While
Menu Log is now delivering from 7-Eleven. The ultimate convenience store just got more convenient.
Panadol Rapid works on pain relief 10 minutes faster than regular.
Yo, what's going on, guys? Alex here. Welcome back to another video for Elden Ring. And in this one, I'm going to go through where to find
Terminus Grace Point, but to get here, if you haven't got here before, you want to travel from the 3-path cross Grace Point to go around the big cliff or hill. There is some enemy. For number 5, this one is at the nearby High Road cross Grace Point after doing the Castle Ensis area. Mark here just south of the Church of Crusade and follow my route at nighttime. So hop on your mount, this is super easy to get to. Route at nighttime. Here. Mark here just south of the Church of Crusade and follow my route at nighttime. So hop on your mount, this is super easy to get to. Just make your way to the marker. Obviously you have to go around the big cliff or hill. There is some enemies on the way, but they shouldn't be angry at you, or at least they shouldn't damage you. So just follow the grassy plains towards your marker, which is about west or northwest, and you'll see the graves in the distance. Again, make sure it's nighttime, and then you can grab the lava too. For number 6, you want to go from So hop on your mount, this is super easy to get to. Just make your way to the marker. Obviously you have to go around the big cliff or hill. There is some enemies on the way, but they shouldn't aggro you, or at least they shouldn't damage you. So just follow the grassy plains towards your marker, which is about west or northwest, and you'll see the graves in the distance. Again, make sure it's nighttime, and then you can grab the lava too. For number 6, you want to go from the High Road cross Grace Point, but if you've just done number 5, you can mark
points were allocated to strength to gain an additional attack rating. Next on the list is dexterity, and 75 points have been allocated to it since it is our main stat for this build. Intelligence-wise, no points were allotted to it since it's not needed for this build. Next is Fate, is 25 points were allotted to Fate so you can access attack and defense boosting incantations so we can increase the build's offensive and defensive capabilities. Lastly is Arcane, and 40 points were allotted to it. We will be using another weapon that scales to Arcane later on to deal with effective with by tackling the Bloodless Samurai stats. Note that I will be standardizing all of my builds around level 200, and it is up to you if you wish to level up the build past around this level. Starting with Vigor first, and I have 50 Vigor points as this build usually trades blows with enemies, and I can easily see that 60 points is still a good choice for this build. You are still going to dodge frequently, so I think 50 points is the sweet spot here. Next is mine, and 25 points were allocated to it. The FP usage of this build is not really that demanding, so I think 25 points will do the job. Endurance is next, and I have 30 points allocated to it. And your main skill for this build eats a lot of stamina on the other hand, but I find 30 points works really well in most cases. While 24 points were allocated to strength to gain an additional attack rating. Next on the list is dexterity, and 75 points have been allocated to it since it is our main stat for this build. Intelligence-wise, no points were allotted to it since it's not needed for this build. Next is Fate, is 25 points were allotted to Fate so you can access attack and defense boosting incantations so we can increase the build's offensive and defensive capabilities. Lastly is Arcane, and 40 points were allotted to it. We will be using another weapon that scales to Arcane later on to deal with effective range attacks. Stats are out of the way, let's move on to the Bloodless Samurai's equipment. And as usual, all of the item locations will be linked. Lastly is Arcane, and 40 points were allotted to it. We will be using another weapon that scales to Arcane later on to deal with effective range attacks. Stats are out of the way, let's move on to the Bloodless Samurai's equipment. And as usual, all of the item locations will be linked in the description section below, along with a build showcase, so stay tuned for that as well. With that out of the way, let's start with the build's main weapon, which is the mentioned Rakshasa's Great Katana. This Great Katana requires 12 strength, 27 dexterity, and no arcade scaling, which I really wish this weapon should have, and has a D scaling for strength and D for dexterity. Not only does the Rakshasa's Great Katana hit really hard and look really awesome, but the star of the show, or the skill that makes this build stand out, is the Weed Cutter skill. The skill that literally cuts targets horizontally and deletes them like weeds. You will be cutting a lot of enemies like weeds, so it does match the skill's name. Pressing L2 once will let the user perform 2 wide arcing slashes that can be extended as long as they have stamina and FP. Each skill usage only costs 8 FP, which is totally insane. Moving on to the pros of this weapon, and aside from its skill cheats at the cost, the Weed Cutter skill hits like a truck per swing, and you will see huge numbers in seconds. Also, these numbers can easily skyrocket due to the moving procs. Additionally, the user will be granted hyper armor while in the middle of the mission, allowing the user to withstand or face wall attacks. While it sounds OP because the weapon is really OP in my opinion. However, like any other weapons, there are negatives as well. While having hyper armor is good, the user will also receive more damage in the process, but we do have a workaround for this later on. This skill's hyper armor can withstand most of the attacks in the game, but truly the bigger attacks can still cancel the weak cutter animation, which is not a good thing. The weak cutter's animation is super slow in my opinion, making you super open for attacks if using early skill. Moving on to the build secondary weapon, I suggest using Dragon Chameleon Seal to max the build for us to have access to the boss using on. While this is the previous Rakshasa build that I made in the past, I noticed that it lacks versatility in combat, so I decided to upgrade Red as the main range damage dealing weapon for this build. Although you can use this weapon in melee range to deal tons and tons of damage, maybe it's even more deadlier than the Rakshasa itself, we will only be using its range skill, the Reduvia Bloodblade. This will damage bosses when they are unreachable or when in the middle of special attack animations. You can use this Rakshasa build that I made in the past. I noticed that it lacks versatility in combat, so I decided to equip Reduvia as the main range damage dealing weapon for this build. Although you can use this weapon in melee range to deal tons and tons, Cutter's animation is super, armor is good, the use only costs 8 FP, which is totally insane. Moving on to the pros of this weapon, and aside from its skill chips FP cost, the weak cutter skill hits like a truck per swing, and you will see huge numbers in seconds. Also, these numbers can easily skyrocket due to the flame procs. Additionally, the user will be granted hyper armor while in the middle of its animation, allowing the user to withstand or face roll normal attacks. While it sounds OP because the weapon is really OP in my opinion, however, like any other weapons, there are negatives as well. While having hyper armor is good, the user will also receive more damage in the process, but we do have a workaround for this later on. This skill's hyper armor can withstand most of the attacks in the game, but truly the bigger attacks can still cancel the weak cutter animation, which is not a good thing. The weak cutter's animation is super slow in my opinion, making you super open for attacks if used carelessly. Moving on to the build secondary weapon, and I suggest using Dragon Communion Seal to match the build speed and for us to have access to the key buffs that we will be using later on. While assessing the previous Chassis build that I made in the past, I noticed that it lacks versatility in combat, so I decided to equip Regivia as the main range damage weapon for this build. Although you can use this weapon in melee range to deal tons and tons of damage, maybe it's even more deadlier than Rakshasa itself, we will only be using its range skill, the Reduvia Bloodblade. This will damage bosses when they are unreachable or when in the middle of special attack animations, like AoE Blast and Light. The Reduvia Bloodblade can easily wrap up your blood loss buildup, and not to mention, this weapon matches the theme perfectly. Weapons are out of the way, let's move on to my suggested spells. I mentioned that we'll be accessing buffs when using this build. The first on the list is Flame Grant Me Strength Incantation for an additional 20% out. This buff increases overall damage by 15% and adds 10% damage negation, which is very helpful for this build. But before anything else, only 6% of you who watch the channel regularly are subscribed, so help the channel by Empire where you can find like-minded Alexander. This provides 15% spins. The first talisman on the list is our staple Shard of Alexander. This provides a 15% skill damage increase, especially when performing the Wind Cutter skill. Highly recommended, so be sure to slot this one. Since we can easily proc bleeds when using the Reduvia or when in the middle of the Weed Cutter skill, I suggest slotting Lord of Blood's Exaltation, and these talismans will provide another 20% attack power if blood loss procs near the user. Of course, we are dealing with speedy multi-hitting attacks, slotting in Rotting Wing Sword Insignia is suggested for this build. You will be swinging and hitting enemies frequently, so the attack boost from this talisman will take effect easily. You will be trading blows with enemies or tank incoming damage when doing the Weed Cutter skill, so I suggest slotting Dragon Crest Great Shield for the additional 20% physical damage negation it provides, and it will increase your overall survivability. Moving on to my Great Runes, on the other hand, Godric's Great Rune is usually my best choice in all of my builds since I do love additional stats it provides. However, for this build, once you get a hold of Malenia's Great Rune, it is the top pick for the Bloodlust Samurai, as this rune adds lifesteal to your attacks. This rune alone can help you regain lost health and circumvent the damage you receive thanks to this rune's lifesteal capability. Now that the main equipment is out of the way, let's move on to the Bloodlust Samurai's armor set. For this build, I am wearing one of my favorite sets in the game, which is the Rakshasa set. Man, it does look great and looks sick in every way. I just changed the helmet to my usual Land of Reed's helm to preserve the build's identity. This is just me though, and you can wear anything you want. Really happy with how it turned out as it matches the build's theme pretty well. Moving on to my plus 1 station, since this build heavily relies on multi-hitting attacks, I highly suggest using Floating Crack tier for further increased damage, and pairing with Open Line Hard tier for more damage negation. Now that equipment and spells are out of the way, let's move on to the Bloodlust Samurai's gameplay and optimization tips. These tips will help you master this build. The first tip that I have for you is to optimize your opener. When the battle starts, what I usually do is cast the Golden Vow to deal more damage and damage reduction, and next is Flame Granting Strength. And then use my Flash Mastery to make consecutive attacks stronger and for more damage negation. Then run into the boss and start performing the blue cover skill. During this time, try your best to deal with as many attacks as you can to attack buff from this physique called mass. You will be dealing tons of damage in the process. The second tip on the list is managing Weed Cutter wisely. After spending time using this build, you will be able to determine when to face roll incoming attacks versus dodging them completely. So when you can tag attacks, just use Weed Cutter till the enemy dies. However, if you need to dodge because an attack can kill you like in 2 to 3 shots, performing the Weed Cutter once can give you a wiggle room to dodge afterwards. But if you notice that you are fighting a super fast enemy, don't push the Weed Cutter skill and stick to the two-handed normal attacks. Tip number 3 is you can replace Lord of Blood's exaltations with two-handed talisman if the enemy doesn't bleed. This will make your two-handed attack stronger. Crusader Insignia is a good pickup as well if you are exploring, as you can maintain its attack box requirement really easily. The next thing is about using Reduvia effectively. I mentioned that this is going to be your main range weapon, and use this when the boss is doing an AoE attack and you can get near it. But you can also utilize Reduvia as your main blood loss ramping tool. You can do so by firing 2 to 3 shots of its blood blade before closing it into the target before spamming the Blood skill. This way, you will be proccing bleed much faster and enjoy the buff for the Lord of Blood patient talisman. I see about the simplicity of the build and more samurai builds coming, so be sure to stay tuned for that. Comment down below what are the things that you've learned from this video, and give it a like to support the channel.
In this Elden Ring video, I'm going to be showing you my Red Rogue build. This is an all-game build that can be used from pretty much the very beginning of the game using the Reduvia dagger. I did extensive testing with this dagger during my daggers video, and I fell in love with this weapon. I'm also going to be doing another dagger build.
Okay guys, so today we're going to be showing you how to get your hands on the Reduvia blood daggers. Now these things are pretty damn nutty, and they are really, really quick. They can also shoot out red blood projectiles, which is pretty crazy. So you want to start off by going to this location right here. This is going to be one of the first main villages or towns that you visit straight after entering the game, and you are going to want to follow the route.
In this Elden Ring video, I'm going to be showing you my Red Rogue build.
The Rakshas's Great Katana is still a good choice for this build. You are still going to dodge frequently, so I think 50 points is the sweet spot here. Next is mine, and 25 points were allocated to it. The FP usage of this build is not really that demanding, so I think 25 points will do the job. Endurance is next, and I have 30 points allocated to it. And your main skill for this build eats a lot of stamina on the other hand, but I find 30 points works really well in most cases. While 24 points were allocated to strength to gain an additional attack rating. Next on the list is dexterity, and 71 points have been allocated to it since it is our main stat for this build. Challenges wise, no points were allotted to it since it's not needed for this build. Next is Fate, is 25 points were allotted to Fate so you can access attack and defense using incantation, so we can increase the build's offensive abilities. Lastly is Arcane, and 40 points were allotted to it. We will be using another weapon that scales Arcane later on to deal with effective attacks. Stats are out of the way, let's move on to the Bloodlust Samurai's equipment. And as usual, all of the item locations will be linked in the description section below, along with the build showcase stage. This is Great Katana. This Great Katana requires is the Weed Cutter skill. and can be extended as long they have stamina and FP. Each skill usage only costs 8 FP, which is totally insane. Moving on to the pros of this weapon, and aside from its skill cheats FP cost, the weed cutter skill hits like a truck per swing, and you will see huge numbers in seconds. Also, these numbers can easily skyrocket due to the bleed procs. Additionally, the user will be granted hyper armor while in the middle of its animation, allowing the user to withstand or face roll normal attacks. While it sounds OP because the weapon is really OP in my opinion, however, like any other weapons, there are negatives as well. While having hyper armor is good, the user will also receive more damage in the process, but we do have a workaround for this later on. This skill's hyper armor can withstand most of the attacks in the game, but truly the bigger attacks can still cancel the weed cutter animation, which is not a good thing. The weed cutter's animation is super slow in my opinion, making it super open for attacks if used carelessly. Moving on to the build's secondary weapon, and I suggest using Dragon Communion Seal to match the build's theme and for us to have access to the key buffs that we'll be using later on. While assessing the previous Rakshasa build that I made in the past, I noticed that it lacks versatility in combat, so I decided to equip Reduvia as the main range damage dealing weapon for this build. Although you can use this weapon in melee range to deal tons of damage, maybe it's even more deadlier than the Rakshasa itself, we will only be using its range skill, the Reduvia Bloodblade. This will damage bosses when they are unreachable or when in the middle of special attack animations, like AoE Blast and Glide. The Reduvia Bloodblade can easily wrap up your blood loss buildup, and not to mention, this weapon matches the theme perfectly. Weapons are out of the way, let's move on to my suggested spells. I mentioned that we'll be accessing buffs when using this build. The first on the list is Flame Grant Strength Incantation for an additional 20% physical attack boost and stamina recovery buff. The second buff on the list is of course Golden Vow. This buff increases overall damage by 15% and adds 10% damage negation, which is very helpful for this build. But before anything else, only 6% of you who watch the channel regularly are subscribed, so help the channel by subscribing today, and it's free anyway, and I will thank you forever. If you can hit the like button as well, it will surely help a lot. Join our Discord server as well, and we are building an empire where you can find like-minded people who love the same genre. Now back into the video. Weapons are out of the way, moving on to my suggested talismans. The first talisman on the list is our staple Shard of Alexander. This provides a 15% skill damage increase, especially when performing the Weed Cutter skill. Highly recommended, so be sure to slot this one.
Hello and welcome to another video from No Nonsense Gaming. It scales much better with Arcane than Faith, and at lower levels of investment, this one outshines every other Faith seals in terms of incantation scaling. This makes Dragon Communion the best early game sacred seal. Dark Side of Grace and Limgrave is the area in which the players should start their search. If you look towards the right from the Side of Grace, you will see a fog should start their search. The Side of Grace and Limgrave is the area in which the players should start their search. If you look towards the right from the Side of Grace, you will see a fog wall. Behind that is the French folk hero's grave. To get access to that region, use 2 stones word keys on the double imp keystone. From there, follow the path as shown in the video. Carefully time your runs in this area by avoiding the chariots. You can get to safety. Carefully time your runs in this area by avoiding the chariots. You can get to safety by getting into these conveniently placed gaps. Turn right from here and jump down. You might get a little bit of fall damage, but by taking this route, it allows one to run straight to the destined location. You might get into these You can get to safety by getting into these conveniently placed gaps. Turn right from here and jump down. You might get a little bit of fall damage, but by taking this route, it allows one to run straight to the destined location before being intervened by another chariot. Run as fast as you can and ignore all the enemies on the way. allows one to run straight to. Location before being intervened by another chariot. Run as fast as you can and ignore all the enemies on the way. Inside the small room is a banished knight that once killed will give you the Dragon Communion seal.
Well, I took you for dead. No matter, it's all the same. Lay out your arms, then.
Hello everybody. For those of you who are searching for a somber smithy, right? And here we just need to rust the headphone on. I'm going to show you how you can get there. So this is the location, right? Which on Infinity we're going to spawn there. Right? This is the location. The cave you can always see it marked at the bottom. But keep in mind you need stone key to unlock this area, right? So make sure you have one before going there. Spawn at Mount Gilmere, right? And here just cross the bridge. So cross the bridge and reach the other side. When you reach the end, we're gonna turn right. Right? We're gonna turn right. So the moment you get out of the bridge, there's kind of yellow grassy area. Oop. And move forward. You can see this stream, right? we're not going to go up, we're going to go down where this thing is located. Alright, here we're going to go down. There are going to be a few walls, you can eliminate them. And basically we are looking at the area along the ledge on the right side after you get down. Right? See this area, the valley? We're going to go there and basically we search for another stream which you're going to see, and we need again just go down there where it's located. Alright, so just see down there where it's located. Alright, so just you see the stream? Alright, this is the area where we should get down. So again, the stream is really at the right where you actually get down. Right, so here when you get down, don't press X, just go up, just go down. Alright, so again, once you land, you're going to turn right. There's going to be an enemy there. This is the left side. This is my location, by the way. Now we're going to turn right and go. You see the enemy? Just go into this area. Alright, so this is where the cave is located. Whenever you need a special, right? So once you go and go, you see the enemy? Just go into this area. Alright, so this is where the cave is located. But remember, you need a stone key to unlock it. Right, so okay. And go. See the enemy? Just go into this area. Alright, so this is where the cave is located. But remember, you need a stone key to unlock it. Right? Once you go there, I'll show you the basically it's not a big area, so, but the super cave is located. But remember, you need a stone key to unlock it. Right? So once you go there, I'm going to show you where it's located. Basically, it's not a big area, so, but the somber smithing stone actually. Alright, so this you see the enemy, and now we can just go up, just go down. Alright, so again, once you land, you're going to turn right. There's going to be an enemy there. This is the left side. This is my location, by the way. Turn right and go. See the enemy? Just go into this area. Alright, so this is where the cave is located. Okay. And go. See the enemy? Now we're going to turn right. This is the left side. This is my location. Away. And now we're going to turn right and go. See the enemy? Just go into this area. Alright, so this is where the cave is located. But remember, you need a stone key to unlock it. Alright, so once you go there, I'm going to show you where it's located. Basically, it's not a big area, so but the somber smithing stone actually resides behind the calendar. It's kind of a hidden from sight. Right? So again, we're using a stone key, enter. Now once you're there, you go down an elevator, and this is the area. Again, very small area with mini boss at the end. Not hard. Go through a melee weapon. Alright, so we go down. Alright, slowly short again. This area, by the way, make sure to activate it so we have summon full available to you. The boss. The first one you can find in this room, full of barrels. There's a doggy there, and another enemy. Once you eliminate them, it's going to be on the wall. You're going to sit in front of you. And when you enter, you can see in front of the wall. There are several things. You probably won't notice it when you pick them up, but if you look now to the right side of the screen, I think you're going to pick them up. There's Super Sleeping Stone 5. Alright, so 1 is 5. I'm going to use 6 1. So, look at this things. They're sitting. The first, go down. Alright, slowly short again. This area, by the way, make sure to activate it so you have summoning full available for you when you fight the boss. The first one you can find in this room, full available for you when you fight the boss. The first one you can find in this room, full of barrels. There's a doggy there, and another enemy. Once you eliminate them, it's going to be on the wall. You're going to sit in front of you. And when you enter, you can see in front of the wall. There are several things. You probably won't notice it when you pick them up, but if you look. The right side of the screen, the items that I'm picking up, have Super Sleeping Stone 5. Alright, so 1 is 5. Now I'm going to need the 6th one is located on the left side of this cabin. See? There's something shiny there. You can get the left. Now I'm going to need the 6th one is located on the left side of this cabin. See? There's something shiny there. You can get right to it on the right side. Need to get to it from the left side. This is the 6th, right? Sunburst Sniffing 6. See? Yeah. Now these are the 2. Yeah, this is it. Just make sure to walk around. It's a very small area. Yeah, good luck. Enjoy the game. I'll see you on the next one. Consider subscribing. It's one little like. Hello everybody. For those of you who are searching for a Somber Smithing Stone 6,
what is going on, guys? It is Blue.
Way that I'm going, it will not. Here, and then follow this path that will lead you to the Somber Smithing Stone 6.
Now, once you do actually make it up that ladder, you can go straight to the left. You do not have to go this way. I don't know why I went this way in the first place. But if you go straight to the left, there will be a guy sitting in a chair with a dog right next to him. And lo and behold, there is your Somber Smithing Stone 6. Easy as pie. And now let's move on to the Somber Smithing Stone 7. Now for the Somber Smithing Stone 7, I'm actually going to show you from the Volcano Manor bonfire itself. A lot of people show you from the Temple of Eagle bonfire, but I think this is actually kind of a hard area to get around and like actually find your way around. So I'm going to show you from here. If you already have the Temple of Eagle, though, you can skip to this part of the video, and I'll just show you from there.
This Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree series covers how to do all quests and missable content in order so that all choices and rewards will be available. For best results, follow this series from the start of Part 1. There will be spoilers in the form of important information, and as usual, useful timestamps can be found in the video description. At the end of Part 3, we finished the majority of the remaining quests, but points
I took you for no matter. Lay out your own.
After resting at a site of grace, we can find a wounded Julan sitting in her initial.